Live from the back of Ruth the Realtor's car, it's the Stacking Deeds Show. I'm Ruth the Realtor's part-time mechanic, neighbor Doug, broadcasting live from the trunk of her 1988 Lincoln Town Car. On today's show, why would you leave the world of real estate and then get back in? We're joined by a guy who did just that and who will describe how he found some amazing deals, Marvá Morrow. In our headlines, what's the worst time to sell your property? Some celebrities will weigh in. And of course, halfway through the show, I'll share some high-stakes trivia in my Property Pop Quiz segment. And now, two musketeers who've blown their budget on their customized bobblehead collections. It's Crystal Hammond and Joe Saul-Sehy.
Good morning, Joe. Or is it afternoon?
Good. Happy, generic time of day? We should say that. Happy generic time of day, everybody. Welcome to the Stacking Deeds Show. The
good work. So good insert time here.
The podcast voted the best new personal finance podcast by the smart people.
Yes.
By all your cousins?
Yeah, that's right. By my mom and by Ruth.
My mom, too. Yes, my mom approves. My mom definitely vote us best. But I don't think she listens.
Crystal, as soon as we get done tooling around with Ruth here, Ruth is dropping you at the airport so you can head to Chicago to work on your property.
Well, she's actually taking me to the Greyhound bus station. That's the best way to travel.
Hey, you know what's funny, Crystal? During my book tour, the best way to get from Raleigh, North Carolina to Norfolk was to head via the Greyhound bus. I tried to rent a car one way because it crossed state lines. It was going to be, I think, $1 bajillion. I tried a flight. That was ridiculous for what's essentially like a 2-hour ride. So I took the Greyhound. And I got to tell you, they had great Wi-Fi. It was a very comfortable seat. I did have a guy 2 seats behind me who decided I wanted to watch the movie with him.
Oh.
He didn't have the sound
Headphones.
on. And the only sad part was initially for a couple stops, there was a guy that the bus driver had to tell that he had to stop talking to himself or he was going to have to kick him off the bus. That was sad. That gentleman definitely had some stuff going on. But all in all, I would say incredible trip.
Way to get us started on an up note, Joe.
I know.
Well, I do have a fun Greyhound bus story. So going to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, our Greyhound bus rides were made very exciting because if anyone doesn't know this, the Effingham prison is just south of the campus. So when you ride that Greyhound bus home, there might be a whole bus full of ex-cons that got on at Effingham and they're headed to Chicago too.
Right.
So one bought me ice cream before. I was like, well, thanks. That was really sweet. But they all had on the same outfit. You know, it's like this denim like type jacket and pants. And I was like, oh, okay. This is today's bus ride. Fun.
Well, luckily they're rehabbed, Crystal. I mean, they've done their time.
Exactly. And they paid their debt to society. There were never any issues. Like I said, I got a free ice cream one of the times because there's a pit stop, you know, because of course the Greyhound, you're not going from A to B.
Right.
You're going from A to Z.
A to B to C to D to E to F to G. Yeah. Yeah. What's a 3-hour ride takes 18 hours and 42 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But you get to see the countryside. Hey, you know what? We're seeing the countryside on this discussion. People are like, when are you going to talk real estate? We've got an awesome guy. You and I met at FinCon, Crystal. Marvá Morrow joining us. And he's got a story of in and then no more real estate for me and then back. Why would somebody leave real estate and then jump back in? We're going to hear that today.
Yep. That's why I love talking to people because we naturally bring up real estate. It comes up somehow, or even people are very excited to tell us their real estate stories. And then we're like, oh gosh, that was a great story. We got to get you on the show. Yeah. So he's going to tell us more.
He's a great guest. Can't wait. Supposedly he's walking around here somewhere around Texarkana. Maybe he's looking for the Greyhound station.
Yeah.
I don't know. But first, we got some celebrities helping us with the headlines. So let's do this. Our headline comes to us from CNBC. They had a show recently, Crystal, that caught my eye. And luckily it caught the eye of some TikTok creators as well, who clipped the show via TikTok. These are a couple twin dudes that I think most of our audience knows who call themselves the Property Brothers. Let's listen to
Property Bros.
Yeah, let's listen to them talking real estate on CNBC.
You only lose money in a tough market when you have to sell, when you're forced to sell, right? And so same with a lot of our clients. They're looking at ways to bring extra income in. In California, where we are, the government's really pushing to have people convert their garages because there's a housing crisis and we need more space. And then people have these empty spots in their home that they could do a quick renovation on and get more income coming in. So that's where we've found an opportunity. And the biggest thing still we've been saying to people for a long time is, there used to be this philosophy, and I remember with our parents and other people who you get a house and you'd stay in it for your entire family life. And, your kids would take over the house. And right. Then it moved into this thing where people were selling on average every 3 to 5 years. And every time you do that, you're paying in real estate fees, taxes, all this kind of stuff. Start to look again at how you can have some longevity into a home. Get into a home your family can grow into, and you're going to build that equity within the home.
That is Drew and Jonathan Scott, the Property Brothers. One of those guys, I think now, is Mr. Zoe Deschanel, right? Mr. Deschanel?
Yeah, he is.
Is it Drew or Jonathan?
Nobody knows. I think people just throw out a name and I think they just react. I bet you Zoe doesn't even really know who she's married to.
No clue. Which one are you again?
That is funny.
Have you heard they're Mormon?
Wow. Wow, this is so much better than last night.
Multiple husbands. This took a weird right turn, Crystal. Let's get it back.
Yes. Well, I do agree that you do. Well, I don't agree that you lose when you sell, but it has to do with time frames. When you're buying properties, they do ask, even before you refinance, it's like, okay, is this a property that you plan on staying in? Sometimes people plan on staying in the places. Sometimes people, I don't know, get antsy, get bored. I don't know why, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have to move for a job. Like a lot of things happen, but a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of people get into the dangerous situations of, okay, they get a little bit of equity after some years of living in the place. Let me refinance and go on this fancy vacation, or let me pay off some of this credit card debt. But the problem with doing that is you are, using up very valuable equity in your home, and you're not buying another income producing asset. You're just doing it to throw more good money behind, quote unquote, bad money. You're not using your equity to buy another income producing asset or buy another real estate investment. And that's where people go wrong, and that's where people lose.
And by the way, we're about to talk about this very topic, Crystal, on Friday on our sister show, brother show, sister show, the Stacking Benjamins podcast. We have a roundtable where we talk about advanced advice versus beginner advice. And advanced advice is refinance your debt, get that all at a lower interest rate, maybe through a home equity loan, a home equity line of credit. But people do exactly what you're talking about, Crystal. They will refinance their house and take the family to Disney. You can use that. People wonder where the down payment's going to come from for a rental property. If you don't have the money, your primary residence could be a place that you could leverage. Now realize your house is now on the hook. Because I think the important thing here, Crystal, I mean, there's so much to break down, but the important thing, number one, he talked about people being forced to move or forced out of their house. If you're forced out of your house in the years 2008, that's a bad time because real estate prices are through the floor and you've got to sell at the worst possible time. So realizing that this is a locked up asset, we have to make sure either we've got cash flow coming in or we have a nice emergency fund coming in to subsidize when we don't have cash coming in to keep the carrying cost of the house. Got to remember that. Can't invest every last dollar into the property.
And that's another opportunity to, okay, if you're sitting around as 2008 and you see you have to move, why not convert that into a rental? And then if you have no experience, then hey, hire a realtor that will help you find renters. You're going to pay a fee for that, but hey, you don't have to foreclose, and then you're still sitting pretty, and then you can find a property manager to help manage your property. We've covered property managers to the hills, on the show. So there are solutions. And then another thing I didn't quite understand when people were trying to get, like, they were like, oh, I'm upside down in the house, or there were other issues that they needed to sell. And it's like, well, did you make sure that you could afford that house in the first place? Because some people they were stretching everything they
As far as they
had
could.
to afford a payment. Yeah. And then the adjustable rate hit that adjustment. And then, oh man, I couldn't afford the payment anymore. You should never have been in that situation in the first place, because that did mean that you didn't do your math and you bought something too big for your britches. That's something that you just couldn't afford in the first place. So that's why we also preach, that due diligence and making sure you can afford that place. And if you're buying an adjustable rate, you want to understand what rate you're buying and what happens when rates go up and down.
You got so many things you covered there, Crystal, but let's take them one by one. We're going to dive into in a couple of weeks with all of our Dieter family, like what is a good deal? You talk about doing the math. What does that math look like? What makes something a good deal? But some of the basics are that rent check that's coming in not only covers the mortgage payment that you took out, it also covers the property taxes, covers the homeowners. And on top of that, you've got money for repairs because you're going to want to do ongoing repairs. And then on top of that, there's money coming in that goes into your pocket that actually is profit. And for some investors, they don't really care about the profit, but you want to have at least a little bit coming in so you can buffer that reserve for those bad times. And we're going to dive into more of that later with our friend Suni Rao is going to join us. And she owns a bunch of real estate and is going to dive into that. I also want to talk about this idea, though. You talked about, instead of moving, are there ways to maybe convert your house? And it was wild, Crystal. When I was on my book tour, I met this wonderful woman in Fort Lauderdale at our stop there who went through a divorce. She made sure she got the house in the divorce, but she couldn't afford the house. She had a teacher's salary. They were a 2-income household. They could afford it on 2, couldn't afford it on 1. Yeah. She actually took the garage and converted the garage into a studio apartment. And not only did that pay enough to make up the difference, it also made it cheaper than it was when she was married. She's like, now I got rid of I remember her talking. She's like, now I got rid of that loser and I have more money. Like, it's great.
I got a different loser, but he's paying me money.
Well, and then
that's right.
Well, and that's another smart thing. And that's what people sometimes use that refinance for. They'll take out, maybe it cost her maybe $20,000, $30,000. I don't know how much it would cost, but that's a smart way to convert that living space. And now that's bringing in money to not only pay off, what she spent to get the work done, and it's helping her pay off the mortgage in her main home.
People should go listen to last week's episode. Because last week, what did Antoinette do? She made sure that the zoning restrictions were okay. And she would buy houses with 2 bathrooms, put a wall between them, and created 2 spaces when there were 1. I mean, as long as the zoning restriction is great, putting in another kitchen, if you've got the plumbing in the right place, fabulous. She didn't double her income, but she definitely got a lot more for 2 people paying her rent than 1. And then later on, of course, turned it into a business. We'll let people listen to that.
Right. Yeah. A $90,000 a month business. Yeah. Don't discount that.
Yeah. But you might not want to have a full-time, she created a full-time job for herself.
Right.
If you want this to be.
And it took 2 years. Yeah.
Be more than that. Now, the cool thing here too is talking about converting part of your property, because some land, especially in our urban areas, I'm looking at you, the West Coast areas like Seattle, Washington, super expensive to get close to downtown, super expensive around Silicon Valley, right? San Francisco, prices through the roof, parts of LA, super hard to get into. I know our friend Len Penzo over on Stacking Benjamins. Len used to have a 15-minute drive to work. And by the time he finished his career, Crystal, he retired last year. By the time he finished, he had a 45-minute drive to work, and he left an hour and a half sooner than he used to leave. Just to make sure that it was only 45 minutes to get to work. So housing, governments are getting involved. And Doug, I know you looked up some stuff on this, right? Just about governments getting involved in housing to give them some incentives.
I did, Joe, actually. There are a number of individual municipalities and states that are doing that. And I know California just did a number of overhauls on its residential related laws and mandates. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on out there.
Yeah, we will link to a piece that is from RubenLaw.com. And this is about California, exactly, Doug, what you're talking about. Back in 2019, Governor Newsom signed 18 bills into. And Crystal, these cities are all different. Like, look in your city to see what you might have. But as an example, San Francisco, if a developer provides 80% or more units to lower income households and up to 20% of units to moderate income households, the development may increase its otherwise allowed height by 3 stories or 33 feet. So you can go up higher if you're going to make some of those lower income housing.
Yeah. But it is important to dive, sorry to cut in here on you, Crystal, but it is important to dive into the actual, like, read the paperwork, whether it's on a website or tangible. But I know, like, for instance, Joe, in the city where I spent 30 years, there are a number of those suites over garages. If you drove around, you would see a lot of separate detached garages that clearly had living spaces above them. And you might think, oh, there's a great place to invest because I can do just what we talked about earlier in the headline segment.
You can't.
But you can't, because those were done before they changed a law, in my town. And so you need to dive in. You can't just drive around and think, sweet, here's a great place for me to get invested, because it may not work out for you.
I remember that area, Doug, and even the housing size, right? Like you had to have a percentage of your lot that was green space. This is a suburb of Detroit. You had to have a percentage, and they actually called it the anti-Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's
rules.
right. It was 25% of the 25% of the width of your lot. So if you had a 100-foot wide lot, you needed 25 feet total between houses, so 12 and a half feet on either side. But there were an awful lot of those Bigfoots that, they went and they maxed. They went right to the edge of the property line with the structure. And after a few of those, the town was like, time out. We're fixing this.
It's a super interesting case study because downtown Birmingham, Michigan is the name of the town. And if you look it up online, you'll see it's this beautiful downtown. Could be like a Hallmark movie, right? When you walk around downtown, people want to live close to there. Well, developers knew that. And so they were buying these lots with these small, older bungalows, these sleepy bungalows, and they were maxing out. Some of these were single homeowners that just wanted to live there and wanted a much bigger house, but a lot of them were developers. And to your point, Doug, before the rules went in, they would use every square inch of the lot. They would put 2, maybe even 3 domiciles on that lot, right? Exactly what we're talking about. And all of a sudden, this sleepy downtown becomes this not as attractive place to live. And so the city got involved and went, whoa, hold on. We kind of like,
too much.
where we were at. So they pumped the brakes. But here as an example, back to San Francisco, if the developer's more than half a mile from a major transit stop, the density may be increased by 80% of the number of units dedicated to lower income households. So as long as it's more than half a mile away from a major transit stop, you can, again, have a bigger house, but it's got to be for low income.
Yeah. And so you're speaking my language now. Why? One of the reasons I'm into developing and what I'm learning, first of all, I have a money guy who's way smarter than me, who's very well versed in all these programs, because that's actually the ETOD. It is called the...
Yeah, you know me.
Get it right. Yeah. That was funny.
Estimated time of death?
You down with ETOD? No, it's... That was
That's
a good
the other
one.
ETOD.
Yeah, you know me. It's called the Equitable Transit Oriented Development. So your property, when you're developing, it's going to qualify for some money because it's within that half-mile radius of transit, because a lot of lower income people, this is based on, well, and it's not even just lower income. This is true in New York too. Most people take transit to and from work. And if you're building developments way out in suburbia land and there's no transportation nearby, that makes it harder for a lot of people, a mass amount of people, to get to work. So if you're thinking ahead and you're like, hey, let's build something near this train station, there's money for you for that. And so this is a great article that talks about what's happening in California, because I know it's, what is it called? Those meetings, like the zoning commission meetings, because a lot of times you do need permission for that rezone, and is like the city council. Yeah. So different municipalities, they have different
people can tell what
decide.
time of day it is by that. It might not be midday when we're recording this.
Right. The brain is like still waking up. But yeah, during these meetings, this is when you actually go, you either get your voice heard if you do or you don't want the properties in your neighborhood rezoned. But you do have a say in what's going on. And as a developer, you want to talk to the community and let them know what's going on and what your plans are, so that you don't get to the city council meeting and they're like, no, we don't even know this person.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what? We know Crystal. She's been visible. She's been talking to us and she knows what we want. And then that's why getting into developing, it's a slow and long process. It's not happening overnight.
We heard many of you loud and clear that you liked our episode with Dr. Seth Kaplan, but this goes back to Dr. Seth Kaplan. Crystal, I don't know what episode number that is. I don't know if you have it in front of you.
Oh, but I do.
Dr. Seth Kaplan talked about the importance of becoming part of a community and getting into the community and helping the community. And man, when you show up at that city council meeting and you not only know the rules, you know the people, they're much more likely to be on your team.
Yep, that's episode 32. That was on October 17th, but I'll make sure I link to that in the show notes.
Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
Coming up, we have a great discussion. Man, I hope it's going to be, well, I know it will be a great discussion because they always are, Crystal.
Yeah, definitely.
Marvá Morrow is a guy that, Crystal, you and I met at FinCon. Wonderful man. And he is a guy who got out of real estate. And I was like, what happened? He's like, I got out for a number of years and I got back in. We're going to hear about his story. Hopefully we will hear about some of the great deals that he scored, some great deals. How did he do it?
Yes.
We'll talk to Marvá about that. But first, Doug, you've got today's pop quiz.
Sure do, Joe. Hey there, Dieters. I'm Ruth's wrench-wielding repair guru, neighbor Doug. Since I'm trapped in this trunk-based sound studio while Joe and Crystal are out searching for real estate gold, it occurred to me they're looking in the wrong place. There's no gold in Texarkana. I'm guessing they were asleep in history class when their teacher let them know that on this date in 1848, President James K. Polk announced that gold had been discovered not in Northeast Texas, but in, of all places, California. That, of course, immediately sparked the creation of San Francisco's NFL team and a housing market boom in the West when all those prospectors went searching for an affordable 3-bedroom condo with parking within walking distance of a pastry shop in the Bay Area. Along the way, a whole bunch of them couldn't find charging stations for their Tesla, and they just founded cities in the middle of nowhere, like, oh, we're done. Hey, this Las Vegas place looks pretty cool. And later, some of them were even dumb enough to sell their land to outsiders. So today's trivia question is, who's the biggest landowner on the Las Vegas Strip? I'll be back right after I tell Joe and Crystal they can get their pickaxes out of the trunk. God, Crystal's is right in my back.
Hi, this is Real Estate Maximalist Alan Corey with today's House Money Media Real Estate Tip of the Day. Believe it or not, high interest rate environments is when you want to start investing, because when interest rates go up, demand for housing goes down. This gives you an opportunity to negotiate for better terms. You get a little bit off the list price now. And then what happens when interest rates drop? Well, home values go up, demand goes up. So you win twice. You get to buy a cheaper property and it gets to increase in value when interest rates go down. But don't just buy any property because rates are high. You want to make sure you are cash flow positive when you purchase in any interest rate environment. That way you avoid speculation and you get cash flow. But if you want another extra bonus to that bonus, what happens if rates go down after you buy? Well, you get the option to refinance to get even more cash flow. That's a win, win, win. And that's today's House Money Media Real Estate Tip of the Day. If you're craving more real estate education, then head over to housemoneymedia.com to check out my real estate coaching and courses. Use coupon code DEEDS for 10% off all of our products so you can learn everything you need to know about long-term and short-term rentals, whether you're investing locally or out of state. That is DEEDS, DEEDS, for 10% off for all Stacking Deed listeners only at housemoneymedia.com.
Hey there, Dieters. I'm Vegas tour guide and part-time mineralogy consultant, Neighbor Doug. You know how some people can't keep a secret? Once that blabbermouth President Polk spilled the beans about gold in California, the place has been overrun with middle-aged white guys singing Going Back to Cali on karaoke night. He also kind of screwed all the park rangers at the national parks. One upside was that the Hoover Dam got some much-needed tourism dollars from people tired of losing all their money in Vegas. So where is all that money going? I'll tell you that it's going to the pockets of today's trivia answer. Today's trivia question is, who's the largest landowner on the Las Vegas Strip? The answer, if you thought it was MGM, it was until recently when they sold many of their properties into triple net leases held by a company called Vici Properties. They own a whopping 660 acres on Las Vegas Boulevard and generate $1.2 billion in revenue collecting rent from all those evil casino owners like Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. Ha! I guess they really Veni Vidi Vici'd the hell out of that strip. My God, I'm a wordsmith. And now, let's welcome a guy with a story about loving, leaving, and loving again, Marvá Morrow.
Crystal, tap Ruth on the shoulder. We got to pick this guy up.
All right. You know, I hate disturbing Ruth while she's in the zone.
Yeah, but I think it's our guest.
All right.
I think that's
Ruth,
Marvá.
That is Marvá. All right, Ruth, pull over.
Hey, guys.
Come on in, man. Here, I'll scoot.
Let me
got my
scoot
thumb up.
over.
Can I get in?
Yes.
I'm just going downtown a little
Well,
bit.
super.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
We can stop there, but on the way, let's hear a story, Marvá. So you used to be a real estate investor and you got out and now you got back in, as we were explaining to our Dieters earlier. But let's talk about getting out. Tell me about buying your first real estate property. You must have been full of hopes and dreams and young and innocent, excited. Tell us about buying the first property.
Yeah, so I had to think about this a little bit. It was a while ago. And after talking to my dad, he's kind of the guru who really just started me into the real estate business. They started maybe late 90s investing in rental real estate, and they got out of it once he retired the first time. And so then he and I had a conversation. I was actually living in Albuquerque at the time. So all this time I've lived somewhere else. I haven't lived in the same city. So it's been long distance real estate. So he came up with a plan and said, hey, he wanted to get back in real estate, asked me if I wanted to join in with him, told him, yeah. So we bought a piece of property. This was somewhere around 2006. And he bought just a piece of land in the middle of a small town in Tennessee where I'm from. And he said, hey, I think we have to find a house now. I think we should probably build on it. And after he did some more research, we went to an even smaller town that's closer to the city. And he said, oh, I found a house and we're going to buy that house with the land and we're going to move the house from the smaller town to the larger town.
Shut up.
So, yeah. So it was a pretty interesting story to start off your first real estate deal. Is like, instead of, buying a house and rehabbing it, you're just buying it and moving it, right?
Yes.
Like from one place to the other.
What is that? What is that? Hold on. What does that cost, Marvá?
Wow.
Like seriously, moving a house, how much is that?
Yeah. So I think the house was about maybe just shy of 1,000 square feet, but surprisingly, it wasn't that much. It was maybe $1,000 or $2, maybe something like that. And remember, we're talking 2006.
Sure.
So before, before everything was going, and we're from a really small town.
Okay.
When I say small town, I mean, 3 stoplights when I was growing up in it. So,
Wow.
The reason I ask is that there was a historic farmhouse where I grew up in West Michigan, and I remember them moving that house. And the house, it was so tall, they actually had to have the city come out and remove like the wires, and it was this big, huge deal. And there's no way that was $2,000. So I'm just imagining the house, though, it was on a slab. It must have been had been on a.
No, it wasn't slab. It was pier and beam. So it was a little bit easier to pick it up and transport it. So yeah, we moved the house over onto the lot that we purchased. And that's essentially where it started. And so I would say, kind of going back to the place that we bought it from, there were some issues with the owners of the land that had the house on it originally, because they had leased it off to someone with a mobile home on it. So we ended up selling the entire lot to them, And essentially the cost of the land, the first piece of property plus the house and transporting the house, we were able to like cover all of that by selling them the land. So the second piece of property that we bought, we were able, the second piece of property that we bought was able to cover everything when we sold it. So we were starting out at basically at zero, right? To be able to free and clear from everything that we had. So that was the first introduction. And so we rented that out. We actually went through Section 8 to rent that property out. So for us, it gave us a little bit more peace of mind because we knew that there was a steady paycheck coming in, you know, renters and things like that. And
who did the screening? Then, like, did you screen them yourself?
So my dad, he did all the work during this time. You know, I was basically the behind the scenes investor.
The sponge.
Yeah. And so he did, like I said, I have to give him a lot of credit because he's the one that's actually, he was boots on the ground for us through this process and working with the government agency, so Section 8, and getting all the work done, right? Like getting all the checklists complete. So he had to, you know, there's a very stringent list when you're going through Section 8. It's a lot of check boxes that you have to check. And so he definitely checked all of those. So he was the one that was boots on the ground doing all of that work.
Let's pause for just a second because, Crystal, it's been a little while since we've explained to our new deeders what Section 8 even is. Maybe they don't know Section 8. I think a lot of, you know, real estate investors do. But Section 8, Marvá, is basically the rent's being guaranteed by the government as long as they meet certain criteria. The tenant's responsible for it, but the government's guaranteeing it, right?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so again, that's the guaranteed part of it, because if you go out and you're finding your own renters, it's a little bit harder, I guess you would say, just from, you know, doing all the screening and everything. And that in this instance, it's already screened, but they're already screened, but you do have those extra boxes that you have to check as far as a little bit with related to safety and those type of things. Not saying that you want to cut corners, but, you know, sometimes with, you know, if you're doing it on your own, there are things that you wouldn't pay attention to where they would come in and give you this checklist and make sure that you have to, you know, figure out all of these other items before they can allow someone to live there.
Do you know anything that was particularly onerous for you or your dad to do to get it Section 8 ready?
Oh. Yeah. There was one part we had to add two set of stairs. So we had two different doors. And so we had to build a set of stairs on the front and the side. And so when we put in the railing for it, I think we had to do the railing maybe 3 or 4 times because it wasn't to a specific code.
Wow.
So yeah, that was one thing that was particularly interesting for us during that
Pay
time.
attention to the details. Yeah. Right.
Yes,
wow.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So far this sounds good. You got tenants in there. It's Section 8. You're in a different city. Your dad's doing all the work, so you don't have to do crap. I like this so far. Like, this is a great reason to be in real estate.
Yeah, it was easy. It was easy on my part for sure.
So then, did this lead to you and your dad working on better things, or are you about to exit stage right now?
So oddly enough, at this same juncture, I think this was about a month when we closed on that property. And probably a month later, I closed on my personal property in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I was learning all the things that come with real estate, from personal to investing, during this time. And so we were there we had this rental property for maybe about somewhere around 4 years. And unfortunately, there was an accident at the home and it actually burned. So no one was hurt or anything. No one was there during that time, but it did burn. And so we actually lost the property. So I know we were talking about how we got out of the real estate business. So that's how we actually got out, is because of the unfortunate incident of the house burning.
Can we talk about that? Go ahead, Crystal.
Lesson. That's a good lesson, just to see, okay, what about like insurance claims, like all that stuff?
Yep. So of course had insurance, right? And so we were able to, you know, get our insurance claim out of that. But the thing that we actually did post that is that, well, we were at that juncture, right? Do we want to rebuild? Do we want to tear it down, build something else? Do we want to fix it? Those type of things. But we ended up actually selling it to another investor. And so they took it and did the rehab on it. And so when that process was going on and they, you know, we were transitioning to, you know, selling it to them and them fixing it up, we just said, okay, do we want to take the funds and roll it into something else, or do we want to just keep it and step out of the game? And so we decided to exit out of the game for a little bit. We actually opened a commercial cleaning company. So cleaning commercial buildings.
Cool.
So we just kind of transitioned into doing something different, right? Like there's always something on the table. So that's how we got in, then came back out.
But that's better than I originally envisioned when you said you lost it. I thought, because Crystal, we've talked to people before and they say they lost it. I mean, I thought there was going to be, Marvá, an insurance claim where it took up all the money and you had to declare bankruptcy. It wasn't that at all.
No, not that at all, because, well, first of all, we knew to have insurance. And then secondly, it's government backed. So they have their insurance as well. So that family was able to, find another place, right? Like during this unfortunate incident, but it was covered all the way around. So our exit was sort of
like
not a specific decision upon us, but, we decided to exit, based on,
or take your
that.
money and do something else for now.
Yeah. Yep.
So really, when you're leaving real estate, it was nothing negative about your real estate experience. Sounds like your real estate experience was, frankly, besides the fire, it was pretty good.
It's funny because it was, but it's also like we had the best experience, right? Outside of the fire. So if you think about it, I would say 95 to 99% of it was good because we were able to, we had some cash, we were able to buy these properties, but then, selling the second piece of property, we were able to recoup our money back. So we were starting at ground zero. So everything from that time on was positive, right? Like it's positive cash flow for us. So to your point, we were getting positive cash flow every month, and then, the insurance claim at the end of it. So it was not really anything bad that I can think of at all from that experience.
There is a couple more questions I want to ask before we fast forward, which is, you've got this partner who's your dad. Crystal, we've talked to so many people that have had bad experience working with partners. If it wasn't your dad,
and family members too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But if it wasn't your dad, do you think you'd partner with other people besides your dad?
I think I would. I think it just made it easier because as I've grown and I've, become an adult, we become more friends versus parent, son. So that allowed me to learn a lot of things from him and have that conversation and be able to have like open and genuine conversations. And so this was just something that we decided to, take on together because, we trusted each other. I trust him to make the decisions, when he's boots on the ground, and he trusts me to make the decisions and thinking about things that he's not, and having these conversations like what we're doing now in the back of this van and going to FinCon and other conferences, right? So he trusts me to be kind of the face and the person that's going out and having genuinely making these connections and just asking questions and learning more and more about it, from other people who did it. But, we also get the experience of, doing it together. And, it's just something that kind of allows us to add another bond and another notch to our bond, if you will.
Crystal, it's so important what Marvá said, to find the right partner, because the wrong partner can just kill everything. And man, if it's not your dad and you don't have the Marvá, what you've got with your dad, that bond, that relationship, I think you want to be pretty clear going in, Crystal, what the roles are going to be.
Oh yeah. And take your time, get to know the person, get to know, what they are bringing that you don't have, and also what you have that they don't have, or that they have that you don't have, whatever makes the partnership, work. And due diligence. Boy, don't discount.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anything that you do, anytime, whether it's, friendship, business, marriage, whatever it is, that's definitely something that you should take into account, right? Like just making sure that you do take the time to know and figure out who this person is, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, again, whether it's in business or friendship or marriage, for sure.
It's kind of like us with Ruth. If we would have known what a smoker she was,
oh my
chain
goodness,
smoker. I'm sorry.
Is
she listening?
Drop the ball.
She doesn't pay attention from what I heard.
We should probably be a little quieter.
She doesn't care. She does not care.
Or that too. Yeah.
All right. So how many years was it then that you were out of the real estate game before you got back in?
So it was about 6. So we exited, I think That happened in about 2016. We did, like I said, the commercial real estate for probably about 3-4 years, somewhere around there. And then we got out of that because my dad retired a second time.
Nice.
And then they decided that they were going to move out of state. So then we sold that business off. And then when they came back into the state, they were living in my parents were living in the hometown again, just for a little bit of time. And they found themselves kind of their home that they would stay in for about a year. And then during that same time, my dad, again, driving around, looking for opportunities, found a place and said, "Hey, I got this opportunity for this house and I wanted to see if you wanted to join in and get back on the horse again." So I told him that, yeah, I'm definitely more than excited to go ahead and go back in with him.
Can we talk about the details of the deal? Because I think evaluating a deal and when it's a good deal,
Yeah.
Why'd your dad think it was a good deal?
Honestly, I'll tell you that we got it for the house probably about $15K. So all in.
Wow.
So yeah, that was
Right.
the
6,000 square foot in the nicest neighborhood in town.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
It's a shoebox.
No, again, it's probably about a 3-bedroom, similar style to what we had before. So about 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 1.5 bath. We actually, so part of the renovation we did earlier this year was made it into 2 bathrooms. But yeah, so
Nice.
But wait a minute, dude, for that little money, it's either in the absolute worst part of town or was it an off-market deal? Was it somebody needed cash and you found
it was
it?
off-market deals.
Mm.
I guess I should have said that. Everything that we've gotten has been off-market. So we haven't had anything that was
Ooh.
on the market or in MLS. So again, that's when I say when he's driving around, driving for dollars, I think is what Coach Carson says in his books.
Yeah.
So before I even knew what that was, my dad was already doing it. So he did that. And yeah, we spent that. And
Well, wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
So did he knock on a door? Like, how does he find a $15,000 deal?
I can't even tell you. I don't think I asked the question. Even this many years later, I don't think I've asked that question. He just said, "Hey, I got this deal." And, I don't know if he went and strong armed somebody or something, but either way,
Right.
he said,
he made him an offer.
Yeah, he made him an offer and they said they accepted. And so yeah.
It turns out, Crystal, we find out later, Marv's dad's with the mafia.
Nah, I don't think so.
He's collecting.
But yeah, no, he driving for dollars. Yeah, he drove around. And so I think we ended up putting about the same amount of money into it to rehab it in 2016. Yeah. And then we took out the equity on there. And then we had someone in there that was renting it. And they've been there until earlier this year when we started the renovation.
Oh, there was already somebody living in the house.
No, not at the time. No, we ended up finding.
Oh,
renters.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the rehab. Like, what did you have to rehab with the 15,000? And what's most important for you when you're looking at a rehab?
Yeah. So for us, we were just going in, looking at the bones, right? Like we're always talking about the bones. The things that we had to pay attention to were the floors specifically, because it wasn't a slab. So we had to go in and reinforce the floors. We had to do some HVAC work to get the ventilation correct. So those were the two biggest things, but the rest was just cosmetic, making sure, replacing countertops and cabinets, those type of things. So it was really a lot of cosmetic things. And then it also had wood paneling in. So we had to do some wood paneling work and replacement, I guess not work, but yeah. So that was the majority of the cost when we went in to do that.
Who's doing the work? The work to that is to throw it away.
No, come on, Crystal. If you're going for that 70s look, come on.
I mean, we're sitting surrounded by wood paneling.
I like the shag carpet.
Oh, no.
Especially in the car. Yeah, right.
But who's doing your work? Like, do you have a contractor? Like, does your dad know people?
So we didn't have a team. We still really don't. Well, we kind of have a team now, but we'll get to that on the update part. But
Okay.
So we didn't have a team. It was just kind of piecemealing, right? Like just asking around, finding people. My uncle, who's been in construction for 30 plus years, he's helped us out with some of the roof items and some of the plumbing. So he was a very big help. And then the rest was just calling around, asking, who knows how to do HVAC or, those other things that we may have needed.
When you were walking us through it, you said you put about 15,000 into it. And then you very quickly said, and we took the equity out. You took the money out to do what?
We took it out to pay ourselves back.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So and we'll explain that for our deeders. So you went to a bank and was like, hey, we want to get a mortgage.
Yep.
Okay. Then
Gotcha. And now the rent is paying the mortgage.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Got you. Are you making any cash flow on top of the rent or on top of the mortgage payment?
Yes, we were making cash flow, but what we did is we took it and dumped it all onto the mortgage because we had already had our, got our money back out of it. So we were just dumping everything that we had onto that mortgage payment.
Got you. Okay. So one new house, successful thing. The only thing we have no idea how you got it was your dad's magic touch.
Well,
I'm going to take a note over here
realtor.
to ask. Side note, my dad did have his realtor license a few years ago. I don't know if it was during this time, but he did have it previously. So that's another item there. So yeah.
That is a good quality to have in a realtor, one that can get deals that are off the market.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then after that, any other houses?
Yeah. So shortly after, my dad, again, driving around, comes in and says, hey, I found another house. Do you want to go in? And then this one was
$17.
I think this one was a little bit more. So it was closer to the $20,000 range, but it needed less work, right? So
$20,000. Yes. Crystal, it's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So don't find many of those anymore. I think we may have had something to do with the market. So we were finding those deals. But yeah, so we found another deal probably about 8 months after we finished previous rehab and actually finished the equity. We're pulling out the equity. So we went and found another property. And so we did essentially the same thing. And we used some of the cash that we had just got back, but also, really just some of the cash that we had laying around again and did the same thing again. And luckily we didn't need to pull out any additional equity because in this instant, all of the money was going straight to the mortgage. And so we had double payment going to the mortgage. And so we ended up paying the mortgage off in about 3 years, somewhere thereabout.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, that's another distinction also, because some people, they're like, no, I'm not going to pay the mortgage off early. I'm just going to keep saving the money to put into another deal. Yeah. Or versus, because then you go through pulling out the equity when you pay it off. And sometimes you pay when you pull out the equity. Because what route did you go to pull out equity? Did you home equity line of credit, refinance? What was your path?
We did a refinance on the first property.
Okay.
Yep. And so again, that wasn't, based on the value of it, we maybe pulled out maybe 20%, something like that. Okay. Yeah. So it was
nice.
After rehab value was very high, once, even though we bought it for, pennies on the dollar.
Pennies.
All these houses still, these last two as well, Marvá, are in this town in Tennessee.
Correct.
See, Crystal, there's a downside and an upside to buying houses all in one area. The upside, clearly, that Marvá is talking about, same thing my son sees when he buys houses in Detroit. You really get to know the area. And I think, Marvá, your dad, knowing the heartbeat of the town, is clearly your big win.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where I was born and raised for the most part. Out of the few years when my dad was in the military, we traveled, quite a bit, but outside of that, that's where our time was spent, a majority of my life, when my years growing up. So, we have family there, friends. That's where we go for family time during the holidays, those type of things. So we do have a pulse on what's happening and what's going on there. So, yeah.
Yeah, the only downside to small town America is there's usually just a couple big employers. Like we've got Cooper Tire here in Texarkana, we've got the hospital, but there's not a lot more. And if something happens to Cooper Tire, then, your rental situation is going to be a little different. But besides that, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. No. It's been a good experience.
So what's next? You just waiting for your dad for the phone to ring and your dad goes, I found another one?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. So we actually ended up selling one of the properties in
directed to your renter
2021 to the family that was renting the second property. So they were looking for a home. They were asking if we would be willing to sell it. So we'd sold directly to the renter. So my dad had spent time with the family and, got to know them, things like that. So he wanted to really help them out. So that was something that we were able to do. I mean, we still made a profit of it, but we still were able to sell it for essentially market value, or less than market value actually. But we wanted to help them out and put them in a good
That's
situation
super cool.
to help them build their family as well.
Yeah, and that's life-changing. That's a dream come true. So you're not only helping yourself, you're helping the neighborhood, the community. And we talk about this. Real estate is a people business.
Yep.
And that's another thing that you were able to sell it slightly for below market value and still make money because you had the equity, the sweat equity, and you didn't have realtor fees and stuff like that too during the transaction.
Yep,
That
exactly.
saves a lot.
Exactly.
We did the same thing. My rental house in Michigan sold it to the renter, and the renter actually told me at the end, he freaked out at first because I'm like, listen, I don't want to own this anymore. I want to sell it to you. And he's like, I don't think I can do it. I'm like, let me walk you through the process. And at the end, he was practically crying. He was so happy. He's like, if I would have known that I could have done this and the fact you helped me buy this house. And I'm like, well, you took this pain in the ass off my.
You're helping me.
Like you win, but I win too.
Yeah. Help me help you.
Yeah. It was absolutely fabulous.
Yep.
That's really cool. So what's next, Marvá?
So, like I said, we renovated the original home earlier this year. So that took a few months to, again, find our crew, right? So I have a cousin who just started his construction business back in 2021 as well. So we've been relying on him to do some of our work as well. So he started that for us. So trying to keep it in the family, right?
Nice.
So next, we're trying to figure out what we wanted to do, whether we wanted to find another property and rehab it or, figuring things out, but actually have a property here. Coincidentally, at the same time that we bought the first property in Tennessee, I bought a piece of property in near downtown Dallas. So it's just a lot. And we're thinking about moving into the Airbnb space. So building new. So that's what I recently talked to my dad about. We're thinking about doing that, going and just building new because we think that, for what we could buy a house for and rehab it at this point in time, not necessarily in Dallas, but even in Tennessee, we could potentially, just take it and build something new. And we know that, everything it has a warranty on it. Everything is brand new. Everything is fresh. We don't have to worry about, a water heater going out for a few years
surprises,
or for the HVAC. Yeah, there are no surprises at all. So that's what we're thinking now is building new. We have a couple of pieces of property in Tennessee, one next to the first house that we got. So it's right next door to it. So we have that property and another property. And there's a small lake that's nearby that people go to during the summertime. So we have a property over in that area as well. So
nice.
So we're thinking about building new and trying that out.
Does your dad own the lot or are you going to bring him in? Does he own part of the lot?
Yeah, he owns the lots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Crystal, I don't know. So he's got a dad who can find deals and a cousin who's in quote construction. I think he's mafia.
Beautiful.
It's lining it up. It's lining up, right?
We got to be awfully nice to Marvá.
I know.
And like I said, keep it in the family, right? Keep it in the family.
Yeah, the family.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's the goal is to look at what it would cost to build and see if we can go that route.
If you think about something that might have sped up your path quicker, that would have, you are where you are today. And definitely every step along the way has taught you stuff, Marvá. But if there was something that you could have done that would help our deeders maybe get there faster, that you wish you'd done better, what do you think it would have been?
I would think that it would be kind of like doing the part that I was saying that I was doing early, going to the conferences and picking the brains of other people who've done it before or finding books about it, those type of things, the things that are readily available these days. Information is everywhere. When we started in 2006, people may have been doing it, but you didn't really know how to find that information, or at least I didn't. So I think with the information being readily available these days, that's really would have sped it up.
Yeah, you mentioned Coach Carson earlier. What a great resource that guy has been. Yeah, for all
Met
of us.
him at FinCon. Great guy.
Yeah.
He's so tall.
He is.
I did not think about
so tall.
I did not even notice.
Every time Crystal and I are in the same room
I
too,
do.
I'm always like, Crystal's so tall. Yes.
We're both tall.
Yeah. Marvá, I know that you are really cranking up the Instagram account and people can follow your journey on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. So Instagram currently Marvá Morrow. I have a lot of inspirational quotes, morning words of wisdom. I send that out every Monday morning. But in the future, in the very near future, I'll be promoting some of our rehab on some of the properties that we're talking about, as well as some rehab that we did on our personal home. My wife and I think we did a good job. She's kind of spearheading a lot of the work that we've done around here.
Nice.
So I think it's really, really nice. And so we're going to do that, as well as, I'll mention it. She's not here, so she'll hear this later. But she's starting up a YouTube page around kind of organization in our home.
Oh,
and so
I need that.
Yeah,
I need that.
Pseudo minimalism,
Yes.
organization,
Yes.
tidying, cleanliness. So
Oh.
I'm looking forward to that. So looking forward to helping her out with that, especially our house now that we've gotten it fixed up and finished and moved in and everything. And that'll be necessary for
That's
our house.
fantastic. We won't
Yeah.
tell her. We won't tell her.
Tell her to hurry up, though.
Hopefully
'Cause I need
by the
it.
time that she's hearing this, she'll have a couple of videos out. So wink,
Well,
wink.
Marvá, thank you so much for sharing your story with our Deeters. We can't wait to see
Yes.
what you guys do next. And if a relative of yours goes into sanitation, I'll get very, very worried.
Let me think about that.
Landfill.
We got to pull over before Marvá gets some ideas. Ruth, let's let this guy out.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for the ride downtown.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
See you later, Marvá. Man, how about that story, Crystal?
Wow. The greatest thing that he taught us, because he had his dad working with him, is find a realtor that can get you off the market deals. Like, that's like one of the breads to the butter. Or just be a good neighbor and make sure everybody knows you're into real estate, because then they'll come to you like, hey, it's time to sell. And
Yeah, it's a great idea.
let's go.
If you're working with a real estate pro, go around and look at all the signs in the neighborhood that you're interested in and find the person whose face appears as many of those signs as possible. Now, the bad news is that that person probably knows that area. You have to beware that you might end up in what's called a double dipping situation if you do that, where the person, is going to represent the buyer and the seller. It gets a little sketchy, but
Dual agents.
yeah, but Crystal, with the new rules, it's much easier now to negotiate the commissions, especially if you're buying, So I would just watch out for that. You see these new people just starting out in real estate, and you want to help the person who's friendly, who's nice. You just don't have time for that, sadly. You need the person that knows the neighborhood.
Exactly. And that can get some deals. It's funny. I was on the podcast for About That Wallet, and I was talking to his listeners, and I was like, you know what you can do also when you're looking for a realtor? Go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what are the top 10 questions I should ask a realtor? What are the top 10 things realtors lie about to get your business? And, I had it like say, hey, prepare some questions for me, because they're going to lie to you to get your business, or not just lie to you. They're just going to massage their ears to get you to
Crystal,
say
that's an
yes.
upcoming episode. There'll be no guest. It'll be you and I just asking ChatGPT all these questions.
That's going to be our
Brilliant.
guest. I love it.
That is coming up. We normally
Agreed.
plan about 5 weeks ahead. So guys, you can expect that in January. Let's do that one. That's a fabulous idea.
I love it. Yeah.
You see if ChatGPT lies to us.
Oh, yeah. Well, we know it makes up stuff. But this goes back to what we were talking about before of they pulled equity out to do a rehab on the next property. So this is using your credit for good. This is using your equity for good that's just sitting there doing nothing. So these are reasons, these are real life examples of when you want to do that and how it actually works. Yeah, these were all great.
But again, go back to this, Dieters. Every time you use more and more and more leverage, it gets a little more dangerous and the dominoes come falling. We saw in 2007, 2008, some very smart people in real estate were deleveraging while other people were adding to leverage. And I remember people back then, Crystal, going, "You're an idiot. What are you doing? Interest rates are low. Everything, properties are plentiful. They're giving 100% loans, no doc mortgages, all this craziness that was going on." And when the system locked down, all those people got flushed out. In fact, I had a really good friend that said, over long periods of time, the North American Real Estate Index and the stock market historically about the same over long periods. The difference is during good times, you will hear more about real estate investors and about how great it is because you can use leverage to go much, much faster. But then that same person goes, but during the bad times, that same mechanism flushes out all the idiots. That's an exact phrase. He said, flushes out all the idiots quicker. Leverage will flush you out if you get too over leveraged.
Right. The weed out. It's like the weed out courses in college. You know, you're learning who has what it takes. And it's not even who has what it takes. If you're following the math, it will let you know. Just because interest rates are low, just because interest rates are high, that's not why you're buying. You're buying because you found something that you can afford. That's a good deal. And it checks all your boxes on your sheet of don't invest unless all these things are true. So whether rates are high or low, I was just saying this, that when I bought that first place, I was making $14 an hour. It was a duplex and interest rates were at 7.5%. And the numbers, they checked out to, even with this mortgage and the money from the renter, I'm still paying a third of what I was paying in rent. So you have to go by what you can afford, no matter what the market's doing. If you find a great deal and it checks all your boxes, an interest rate is a box, your income is a box, all that are boxes that already. And so
but that's the key. Some people don't. They hear good deal. I love your phrasing there. It checks all your boxes. That assumes, Crystal, that you know what your boxes even are. Right? You start off with these predefined limits. And all of our friends in real estate will tell you got to look at a lot more deals than you think you're going to have to.
Yes.
Like you want to look at 5 houses and buy one?
No. Nope.
Joe, I think it's important to dive into that quick sort of flippant box comment that Crystal made. Flippant is probably the wrong word there.
Checking.
But what I mean was, we talk a lot on our sister show and Stacking Benjamins about have a plan. Like, is this a good investment? We don't know because it depends on if it's good for your plan. I suspect a lot of people probably get into real estate as a revenue stream for themselves and don't fully flesh out what their full plan is from a business perspective. Yeah. And if you don't do that, if you don't really have a full, not only just a specific, what are the attributes of a specific property that you're looking for, but a larger sort of business plan, you could find yourself in a lot of holes, I would imagine.
Yeah, we call it, the certified financial planning world calls it investment policy statement. I think it's even more important here because of the illiquid nature of real estate to have an investment policy statement. This is a good deal for me. This is not a good deal for me. This is what I need my percentages to be, the amount that I can make in rent. This is how much money needs to go toward maintenance. This is what a good deal looks like. And hold on to those because you're going to end up looking at 100, 200, 300 properties maybe sometimes. And if you can, Crystal, find those, and this goes back to the people and knowing the people in the neighborhood, those off-market deals become even that much more valuable. Like they're such a time saver. Such a time saver.
Yes. And you're also make sure one of your boxes is, do I have this much money in reserves or in my emergency fund? Because that's another big box. Tiffany Grant, we talked about that with her on the show. Well, she had to repair like the water heater or something within a week of buying her new place. Sure. And she's like, if I didn't have an emergency fund, I would have been screwed.
How often have we joked about getting to know the people at Lowe's on a first name basis right after you buy a property? Right? Like you become their buddy.
Yep.
Doug, you had something, you were hitting the back of the seat here.
You felt that? That was Crystal's pickaxe. Well, only that in addition to boxes about specific properties, you might think even more broadly so that if you're always looking for a deal that just focuses on attributes about a specific property, I suspect you could find yourself over invested in specific property types or neighborhoods. And maybe you want more diversification than that, because if you're all in on one neighborhood because all of those, who knows why, but properties in that neighborhood or town are hitting all of those criteria, it could be because something's going wrong in that town and property values are going down and they appear to be great values for you, but maybe you want to diversify and get in some other areas. I mean, that could be part of your investor policy statement or real estate investment policy statement to make sure that you're not over invested in one specific area, because a lot could hit all your criteria, but turns out, oh man, I followed my rules, but my rules weren't broad enough.
It's funny because for real estate investors, that's what Doug's saying, Crystal, is a double-edged sword. Like, I think, Doug, it's important to know that you're doing that. But I also think, like, let's go back to my family example that I go back to. My son, Nick, owns all of his properties in Detroit. And he knows that if Detroit relapses, right, and this great turnaround resurgence the city's having goes the opposite way, that's going to kick his ass. But on the other side, while the resurgence is happening, because he knows so much about that area, he knows so much that he's able to find deals that he wouldn't have been able to find. In fact, it's funny, in some cases, when he was working on a house that we stayed on at recently, we stayed at one of his properties over Thanksgiving. We were visiting family. It's a couple of streets over from an area named Indian Village. By the way, most people here don't know Detroit, so they don't know Indian Village. So it is adjacent to a pretty sweet area, just a couple streets over. And Nick was on the inside enough that when he was rehabbing this house, there were 5 other houses on the street being rehabbed by other real estate people.
Nice.
So he knew exactly like what street was good. And he even told me, he's like, if you go 2 streets the other way, that's maybe a couple of years from now, you know, that's still coming.
Yep.
But right now it's this street, and he was able to get in on the bleeding edge. By the way, he bought his house, I believe, for around $120,000. One house on the street, guys, just sold for $340,000.
Wow. It's amazing. Yeah, that's really having your pulse on a neighborhood.
Yeah, but he's got to know, Doug, to your point, he knows what his Achilles heel is. And that's where the emergency fund comes in, right? I'm going to under diversify so that I know, but I need to have a hell of an emergency fund because Detroit slides back the other way. Some government official gets in trouble. There's some knock, whatever.
Crystal just flippantly threw out another phrase. I don't even actually know what flippant means. I'm just using that word. But she just said Achilles heel. And, but,
Joe said that.
you know, within a huge city like Detroit that covers a massive amount of square miles, right? I think more importantly is neighborhoods. That was the word Crystal used that really caught me. So you can still diversify within the city of Detroit, as if we're going to continue to use that as an example of a place that has great value. And maybe overall across the whole city, the city maybe relapses, as you said, Joe, and kind of falls back on its tough times, but specific neighborhoods might not.
Right.
So Nick can still diversify within the city of Detroit by looking at specific neighborhood criteria.
Yeah. Fabulous. I love that discussion. And by the way, looking at the time, I think, Crystal, next week we will take a call to Ruth's rotary phone.
Yeah.
Save that for next time. How do people actually call this phone sitting between us? This huge, amazing phone.
You head to stackingdeeds.net/voicemail and you will hear your voice, or we did say we're going to try to do an AI voice and then we'll answer your question. Any question, ask us on the show.
Let's take a second before we go. You can also sign up for the show notes. People are like, wow, you guys talk about a lot of different things.
Yes.
We can send the show notes directly to your email box. And even if you miss an episode, you can click on the links and see exactly these topics that we're talking about in more depth. Crystal, how do people get on the show notes?
Yeah, show notes, stackingdeeds.net/show notes, or even the homepage. You should get a pop-up your first visit, and then that way you'll get the show notes hand delivered. And you can actually listen to the show from the email too, because we have a link to the show like right up top also.
We press the easy button for him.
Yes.
We make it so easy for him, Crystal.
As easy as possible.
Care about our Dieter community. Speaking of that, we mentioned at the top that the Plutus community, nice enough to call us best new personal finance podcast, Crystal, but we also passed a milestone. This is, a lot of people don't know that the average podcast has 7 episodes.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes. And the average size podcast, the 50% mark for podcast, is somewhere in the 200 listener range, which, by the way, to me, it's always been not about the number of listeners as having a show that's impactful, that if one person does better, it's fantastic. You know, if one person, it's.
I thought you were going to say it's whether or not we like our listeners.
That's
No, we love our listeners. Without you guys,
cool.
we wouldn't be
like,
here.
I'll take 150 listeners if they're cool.
Yeah.
If I want to hang out with them.
Yeah, I'll have 4 listeners, but not effing Lou. Lou is a loser. Lou, if you're listening, you got to stop.
We love you.
We got to figure out how to block Lou.
Right. Welcome, Stacking Dieters, except Lou. No, but Crystal, we just passed a big milestone for number of listeners.
Yes, we have 80 1,000 listens. So that's huge. I want to thank every single listener. Like, we couldn't have done it without you and your beautiful ears. Have you ever been complimented on your ears? I don't know if you have or not, but
oh yes, all the time. Joe, you got gorgeous ears.
We're going to compliment you for making a great decision. You know, hey, everybody's running out of time. So we really appreciate you spending time with us and listening to us. And thank you.
80,000 downloads is a big number. We are so thankful. But you know what? If just one of them made a difference in your real estate investing or encourage you to do it, that's what fires us up. All right. I think that's it, Crystal.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
All right. We got to get you to the airport to get to Chicago. So she's Crystal. I'm Joe.
At Condo
Doug.
Crystal.
At Condo Crystal. That's right.
And you're average Joe Money, right?
Average Joe Money. That's right. All right. And I've been more active lately on social media. So
us too.
Come say hi.
Yeah. Make sure you follow the show. I'm the social media person. So I've been trying to get some audiograms up there and some posting up there. So I've been picking
that.
Yeah, I've been picking my personal favorite parts of the shows and making
I know which part those are. That's why they're all Crystal.
No. I have all of
Crystal's
us.
brilliant. Yeah. All right. Doug, what are maybe the things that should be on our to-do list now?
Well, Joe, the first thing on your to-do list is to see if there's an opportunity for you to lengthen the life of your property. Maybe find a way for it to generate some revenue. Moving carries huge costs, and if you can find ways to turn property into an investment, that might be your best answer long-term. Second to do, take some advice from Marvá and look at your hometown. You know that area well and can see development opportunities before others, and you might be able to negotiate with locals for off-market deals too. But the big lesson? Before you start following around two people looking for real estate gold, maybe throw a history book their way. Yeah, sure, you look cute in the miner's hat, Joe, but there's nothing here. Thanks to Marvá Morrow for joining us today. We'll link to Marvá's Instagram account on our show notes so you can say hello. It's fantastic that we have mentors like him to help our community grow. Have someone you think we should talk to? Email us. Send that email to joe@stackingbenjamins.com.